Welcome to King's Escapade. This is a custom map. As you can see, there is 5 points here distributed evenly-ish across the map. Natural for each team. In the blue trunks dropping in here for Team 1 ANS, we have got Rocket, Dr. Blade Steel, Levin Zero, Admiral Sky, and Vren55, who guest appeared on the channel the other day. Team 2, we've got Tasty Cookie, Gnome Puncher, Carsony 126, The Spy Eye, and Solar. So they're going to be appearing in the orange trunks there. The map is a nice little 3 even points down the middle. You've got an A point down low, B point and C point kind of high above that neutral marker. Very high up in the air, we've got these D and E points, kind of naturals for each team. There's going to be some kind of fight for the various points here, and we're going to see just how these teams deploy and what kind of tools they will take to dismantle each other. This is the new update for Nebulous Fleet Command, so those of you who are looking forward to carriers, yesterday was the day. Players have had at least 24 hours to figure out how to best dismantle each other with the new tools and toys on display, so let's go ahead and see what they bring. We're seeing a nice distribution across the left side of the map here. A little bit of acid sense, just kind of obligatory capper, go to that outside point. Notice that the E point and D point are slightly offset towards the B side here, so you tend to see a lot of violence kind of on this side of the map. That does mean that this area here, if it is left uncontested, can lead to some interesting swings and potential fights going down that avenue. It's all on the players, depending how they want to set themselves up. You see there's this very tall vertical cover here that provides a very nice safe background area to shoot onto this point here. However, in turn, that means that if that point is captured, they're going to have to then try and retake, and it'll be the exact same thing from the opposite side. So keeping these points neutral is very important. We're going to see how they decide to invest their assets. We're seeing a lot of stacking, like we mentioned, towards this kind of inside avenue. There's a circle here we can't see, which is their deployment zone. Basically, all of the ANS teams stacking up that area, sending one guy down low just to keep their awareness up, and then the obligatory capper C side. OSP electing to go nothing on the C side, all in for that A, B, and D cap push, so they're going to be just setting up to do that. We are 50 seconds on the clock here, assuming everyone locks in and readies up, and we're going to... sorry, hairball there. We're going to see just what kind of plays that they decide to make. This should actually flip it around to this side because Team 1 is in the blue trunks here, so... a little hard to see on that angle, though. This is, of course, a custom map, so it might look a little bit lumpy compared to some of the ones you've seen before in Nebulous Fleet Command, but hey, we take these custom maps here where we can get them. Keeps the variety up in the game. It's very nice to see that people are, even in this early access phase, giving us these lovely modded maps to play on, so that way we don't just play on all the same vanilla maps over and over again. All right, 20 seconds to go. We're just waiting on the ANS team to ready up here. Looks like they've all unreadied, so they just need to reset their deployments and stuff. They're trying to figure out just exactly where they are. Both teams are on comms and coordinated. There we go. ANS has locked in. They've situated themselves the way they want to be. OSP having a bit of second thoughts there. They just quickly unready and thinking, hey, maybe they're up to something. So a little bit of the mind games in the pregame as we're just waiting for everyone to lock in and get this game going. You see them now all trying to unready and see if they can just delay the clock and then move about. There we go. See a couple of last second adjustments. Deployments do matter as time is a very valuable essence. If you get to your points slightly faster, you can get a slight point advantage. And if, say, both teams only have one cap, being just that much ahead of the enemy team does mean that you can end up getting victory. And every point does matter, well, to an extent, at the very end of Nebulous matches. It's all about who hits that final amount first. Just going to type. Just going to remind people this is a 1250 points for their deployments and stuff. Set themselves up correctly. Normal games are to 1,000 points. We gave them a little bit of buffer on this, just saying, hey, guys, you've got a little bit extra. Make sure you're making that change. So 50 seconds to go here. ANS has locked in. OSP just finalizing their stuff. They can make their decisions. Mark's in. Hello, nice to see you too. Look at those lovely new dancing emotes. So a little bit of shameless self-shilling. We got a friend of the channel who made some of these little dancing pikes. They're the new fighter craft you see in Nebulous Fleet Command, or rather one of the new fighter crafts. I like those little gurus. You can get those by subscribing to the channel or unlocking them with the special command on Twitch, which costs some channel points, but you can get those pretty fast by watching. Anyways, on deployment, we're going to look at some bulkers here. I'm seeing plasma guns on the side of this thing. Very good for stripping off armor. We'll go through the fleets fast as we can and then see what kind of violence ensues afterwards. King's Escapade in the Pegasus system, a hidden exotic crystal mining operation. So, all right, top of the list. Let's take a look. We got Admiral Sky over here in the blue trunks on the ANS side. This is the new Levy-class escort carrier. We're seeing the internals of this thing. Has a whole bunch of bombers inside that, 10 to be sure. Got some of these CWAC, AWACS devices here, so these are very good scouts. And then some general-purpose interceptor fighters. You can see joining it now is going to be the Clear Skies, and then will be over here the Starlit Skies. So this is one of the starter fleets, Maple Squadron, if I remember. No, it's Task Force Maple, not Maple Squadron. So nice assets here. These are very good frigates because they have missiles on top that are good against craft, and they've also got some of these Sarisas on the bottom for shooting down enemy craft and missiles. Joining it, we're going to see that there's an Axford coming in here. Nice to see it's got some Sarisas and Auroras around this. Very good point defense in the age of carriers. And joining it, we're going to see there's a cute little Corvette here. Torpedo variety. Has a chaff box on the nose, torps around. Defenders on the wings there. So we get 1, 2, 3 of those things distributed pretty evenly across the map. Let's see. 1, 2, and 3 accordingly. Let's see. Dr. Blade Steel down here has got a jamming frigate, comms jammer, and then 3 blankets. Nice electronic warfare on that thing. We're going to see that there is a 450 with a little launchpad backpack Axford on this thing. So it's going to have probably, yep, a pair of skiffs. Very good scouting devices here. We're going to see it has a little torpedo corvette with a nose gun. Fairly standard corvette from the previous patch. Probably not too much change about these. We're going to see these distributed just kind of evenly across the map. One going towards seaside. We got another carrier coming in here from Rocket. This is going to be another one of those Levy-class carriers. Let's take a look at the payload. Again, a flight of bombers in this thing. You got some of these little scouters. You can see some of them have now launched airborne, so they are going to go out and scout the map. They've got a couple of different types of Tantos here, so might be different nose guns on those. We'll see how they go. See them taking off now as they are launching. You hear the caps start up as both teams are securing their naturals at about the same time, so that's going to be a fairly even split. Vren, the Axford Enjoyer, coming in here with a 1 and a, if it will flick to it, there we are, 2 Axfords. Flak on the sides here along with defenders. Big old size 2 backpack in there. Going to see this has the Conjure Active Decoy. Active decoys have now been made into size 2s, so you have to consider those as a potential option. So that said, you can also fit some other tools and toys in there if you had the budget. Anyways, that's the ANS team as we just watched. Now the camera pan to the other side. We're going to see... let's start actually over here with Carsini. We're going to see there is a 3,000 point carrier. Actually, Gnome has a 3,000 point carrier as well. Double more lines. So there's going to be a lot of craft in this game. This is a high budget investment. Let's take a look at these things. Whole banks of Surgeon Bombers. I count 20 in total there. And then a whole bunch of Barracudas. Let's see. That'll be quick math on stream. That's 9 there. That's another 9. That's going to be 12, and then there's going to be 2 more. So whole flight of those. We're going to see these things getting airborne as soon as possible. Gnome has already launched their first 2 of those. Ooh, Gnome actually with a container liner. This is the container ship that, well, previously it was just going to be container liner. Now it can also be outfitted as a carrier. So, man, you don't see these things very often. This is going to be quite interesting seeing container plays. I don't think many people are expecting this. Typically, when you see this Moorline hull, you're expecting the carriers that we just get. There's a couple of scouting skiffs here out and about to try and to take a look for things. They have got a couple of missiles with them just to keep themselves safe. You see Solar over here has got themselves a 450 Acello Auroras on the side of this thing, along with some illumination to try and punch through that jamming. Bullseye on the chin, very good for providing lock, and that golf ball, disco ball on the back. Very nice to provide comms jamming. Joining it, we're going to see there's a little escorting tug. This has a little jammer here, the Lyrebird, as well as having a talisman, little 2-armed bandit there, and some pop gun goodness. They've got a We Have Carrier at Home device here, so there's going to be 3 launch pads on this thing. Let's take a look at the internals. Has 2 internal hangars on that, so it's able to carry, I believe, a complement of, 6 fighters. So nice little kind of tech here, bringing out a couple of extra scouting skiffs by the looks of it. We saw there were some Barracudas as well. They're getting pre-flight checks done, so those are going to be handy to bring around. And lastly, rounding it out with just a cheap little shuttle here, T-20 PVs and rockets on that. Tasty Cookie coming down here. We see that there is a Super MLS-2. I believe that, yes, this is one of the starter fleets as well. The name escapes me, but I believe this is Tantalum Squadron. So there's going to be 1, 2, and then 3 multi-mission tugs stationed around the map. We'll take a look at the positioning. You can see these distributed evenly for radar coverage. Speaking of radar coverage, we see these little scouts here, the Sundial class vessels, although this one designated Hourglass. These are scouting around the map with a nice 10-kilometer radar range, so they'll be able to spot the enemy. There's a bit of an exchange happening on B point as this is the Charlatan, one of the cheapo cappers. Take a look here. There is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 of these things. Or, well, rather, there was 4. There's going to be 3 shortly as some rounds open up on this thing. 450 horribly overpenning, but you see the first attacks go off there. Bam! That is going to be first blood of the game as Rocket's Corvette unfortunately just bites it. Rocket just appears to have a, completely blank, empty Corvette. Just good for keeping a little bit of the caps going. Yeah, we saw Rocket had just one of those little escorting devices, but they decided to invest in other assets rather than keeping conventional like Admiral Sky had. So that's going to be first blood there as B point goes in the hands of the OSB. A point as well as the Corvette is a little bit slower to get on target. That said, it is arming its torpedoes. Going to be trying to take out this little swindler here. The Pavis is quite good when it is in arc. However, the shuttle is now turning towards the enemy the wrong direction as that T-20 is going to end up getting massed here. Cannot fire in defense. Let's see what kind of torpedo is coming out of this guy real quick. They are using just the straight launcher, not the cantered, so it's going to be taking a quick second. A little bit of desync there, but that is going to be getting on target. CMD ARAD is going to be firing towards it. AMMs are out. Ooh, actually, that's a... Ooh, that was a size 3 hybrid that we just saw get deflected by AMMs. All right, so that's different than a torpedo. They're going to be trying again. A-cap is secure. Let's take a look over onto B side. Yep, nothing more contesting that. So ANS does fall behind slightly in that regard. Let's go through these fleets real quick. So this was Tantalum Squadron, just nice little cozy mix of things. And this missile brick back here has a nasty amount of missiles in it, 108. I've used this thing earlier today and had a great time. Lastly, rounding out the fleets, we're going to see Spy Eye here has got themselves, looks like 100 mil bulkers galore. Oh yeah, this thing's going to have a good time shredding through those light assets like craft and such. We see this is a plasma mostly. Okay, so 6 plasma turrets and then 2 T-30s on these. And then rounding out, we're going to see another, just all 100 mil. So any fighter that gets within range of this thing is in for a bad time. That is so much 100 mil. The flak does not play. You're going to see some very dangerous things happening there. All right, let's take a look over on this point. So we're going to see some torpedoes out here going to be launching towards that target. That does mean that the Corvette goes down, but in turn, you're going to see a whole bunch of these AMMs trying to deflect it. Kind of a wasted effort there, unfortunately, just due to the ranges here, as the multi-mission tug over here is going to be expending pretty much his entire payload, I want to say. Where's this multi-mission on the list? Yeah, so it's unfortunately out of AMMs that might come into play later on. Multi-mission tug is pulling back, has tried to engage here, but looks like it's choosing to give ground. This ship has been heavily wounded, losing its prowler drive and its torpedo complement. Has only got a restore to fix one of those, has to pick the drive, so that's going to be a little bit of blood happening there. That said, let's see if these containers are good or not. Will they end up being the knockout that they need? Piranha rockets are going on target. Defender is in arc and shredding through a couple of them, but some will maybe find their way home. Yes, bam, there you go. That is going to be a complete knockout. ANS is denied the ACAP. More missiles coming in just for good measure to keep that going. OSP securing their early game advantage using their shuttles, slightly faster speed to get out of those points first. ANS does not quite have the screening going. That said, ANS with its dual carrier flights is now starting to get a lot of craft airborne. You see them starting to build up here. Flights of 10, 4, and 2 with the bombers here. They're just starting to get more of their assets airborne, trying to make some plays happen with that. ACAP denial was pretty big there, as this will hold them on a 3 cap. Still, it's a lot of points to go. It's 1250 to win, so you gotta wait for them to get up to that. See a couple of these containers just kind of looking around here. They are actually locking onto, that looks like one of the SDMs, so yeah, I'm going to see a couple of these just kind of getting seduced here. SDMs are technically capable of destroying containers, although I believe you need 2 or 3 hits with them, so not the most effective usage. At the same time, containers are relatively cheap, so could be trying to deplete the enemy of their various assets there. Cool little tool. Yep. Taking a look down here, B point. Vren is going to be walking forward and discovering that, oh god, plasma exists, as Vren is getting kind of cooked like a fish here. He managed to stop just barely in time so that the majority of the plasma overshoots. That said, the gunners are now going to start correcting. Plasma does take a little bit of time. These are the auto-loaded variety, so they will have to go through a bit of a lengthy reload cycle. See that these things do not have any energy regulators on them, just rapid cradles to dump their load. So there's a little bit of time here for Vren to get some shots out. That said, here comes some missiles in flight. We got some SGM-2s deployed from, I believe that was Tasty Cookie's little missile silo. Yeah, these are going to be going after active decoys and chaff for the most part, but at the same time, that is a scary thing, just seeing how many missiles can now be deployed on target between the little silo monitor over there and the container liner. 100 mil is largely deflecting off, but at the same time, they are going to be hitting into the cannon there. We see that there's enough plasma scorch on this that the armor is thin enough that those 100 mil rounds can get through. Looks like another Corvette was... Nope, that's not the one I'm looking for. Yeah, this Corvette, both of those were taken out on the point. So Vren moves up forwards and is now suddenly having a very bad time as he's suddenly stationary. Look at that speed, only 4 meters a second. Plasma is going to start biting into this ship as they, I believe, will get a lock. Where is Vren on this board? Oh, wrong side. He's somewhere in here. Okay, so no lock quite yet. Once they get that pinpoint range, taking a look here, we can kind of get a estimation. We should see the pinpoint lock radar kick on any second now, and then this ship is going to die as it gets focus fired. Yeah, the entire front half of the ship is getting cooked here as all that plasma kicks in. Ooh, that's some nasty damage suddenly in the side. So Vren, one of the higher ranked players here, suddenly falling victim to one of the classic blunders of wandering your ship onto the A point. A point, relatively kind of the term we use here. Not exactly the A point proper, but just one of those neutrals that tends to be overwatched by a lot. So yeah. See a couple of fighters kind of kicking it around here. Let's take a look at the battle space wider. And it's dispersing itself, sending its assets out here. They are going to secure themselves the C cap here, and is currently sitting a 2-2 cap, so that will put them at a disadvantage. That said, militarily, they are suffering heavily as this Axford is not having a good time. 3rd round of plasma cooking into the front of this thing. It's thoroughly smoked on the one side. It's going to start getting smoked on the other one here. Yeah, that's going to have a bad time. Might be EO locked. We don't see any of the pike craft around, which would be providing the EO lock required to get the very high accuracy. But in turn, this thing is just suffering. Like, no 2 ways about it. Axfords did get nerfed this patch. Their maximum repair rate is down, so they can't recover themselves quite as well. And we are starting to see just the internals fall apart here as more and more of the point defense gets degraded. That's a big problem, as we see both defenders and the stone walls are down. So if a flight of bombers were to approach this ship, there's not really that much it could do about it. We see its companion here, the Steel Prince, is starting to move itself backwards, realizing that they need to cut their losses. They're just going to be pulling back out of here. This ship, it will occupy the enemy's attention and eat some ammo, but it's probably not going to make any more effect. That said, that will give them a little bit of reprieve, as that is going to jam out the enemy sensors. That reactor going off on, I believe, this Charlatan there. Yes, so that's going to be kablooey. 20% max repair compared to the old 25% max. Yep, so what we're talking about there means that this at 0% can be repaired up to 25% listed value there. Plus or minus a little bit, because it has to be a certain amount to get minimum functionality. Still, though, we're seeing a very damaged ship. Does have quite a few lockers here. It has to restore the bulk mag and that reinforced in the nose and get itself back on its feet. Still, though, it is going to take a little bit of time to get this thing back together, and the Plasma Scorch does not go away. You cannot recover armor damage, so this ship going to be very vulnerable. Walking into that point was expensive. The question is, will they be able to recover it? We see some SDMs over here starting to engage on these fighters. Fighters having to juke and evade, trying to dodge those. One of them does get splashed. The other one does manage to evade that shot, though, so that's still going to be a slight purchase made. That said, let's see what happens over here. We're going to see one of those little size ones going after one of these little skiffs here, trying to deny the OSP scouting. Does overshoot, unfortunately, but those nose guns might not. There's not really much that can save this skiff as it is continually getting dinged down here. We just watch its health bar degrade as it goes further and further into the red, and bam, there it goes. So yeah, ANS starting to lever the carry advantage. They had taken some time to get their flights active, but now that they are actually out on the map, they're starting to pressure a little bit of area here, forcing the OSP to pull back a little bit with some of their scouting devices. More containers on path here as we're looking towards the A point. There is some fighters on station. There's quite a few fighters on station. 14 Tantos are going to do some work against these containers. Let's watch as all those 20 mil and also that little 15 millimeter sand shot coming into play here. So that's going to be a nice deflection there, keeping the little corvette that could safe here as it has secured that A-cap area. OSP winning it in some regards, but ANS taking a decisive cap advantage. They now sit on a 4 cap compared to the OSP's 1. OSP needs to decide where they're going to push up and with what, as they have quite a few assets that they could lever for an advantage, but they currently seem to be sitting back rather content. We saw over here that some hits must have gone through earlier as we're taking a look. Yeah, the booster reactor and, a fuel line fire cannot save that. How long is this thing going to hang on? Where is... Oh, that's the wrong ship. Sometimes Neb gets a little bit silly like that. Okay, they do manage to save it, so that was a very close fuel line fire. Could have potentially done a lot of damage, but so these ships looking fairly healthy, although with these bulkers, you're going to see just what happens when fighters enter range. Yeah, look at those flak bursts go off. 100 mil flak does not play around. A couple of those fighters actually biting it here. Oh, a lot of them biting as the proximity just goes down. 3 fighters instantly smoking wrecks there. Gonna have to decide to pull back and not engage that area. That is about an 8-kilometer no-go zone around that ship. Seeing some fighter craft engaging against these little interception missiles here, the Tornadoes. So this pair of frigates is going to project its own 8-kilometer no-go zone. Different varieties with the different types of vessels here. You see the conventional kind of like gun flak style versus the interception missile over here, which is going to be doing numbers. Let's see. There is a bit of fighter combat trying to go on here as the fighters have to try and juke and weave. One of them does bite it again to those missiles. Sarissas as well. So we're seeing this nice engagement here taken by the ANS. They baited the enemy into the range of their overwatching frigates, and now they're having a very bad time. They just had to juke and evade and wait for those Sarissas and secondary missiles to come in and swing on them. It's going to be a... Oh, nope, they do actually manage to dodge that last shot. So there's one Barracuda left here that's trying to pull itself back and maybe out of this fight. A couple of support containers going out here, trying to look for clues over that away, but they're having a bit of a rough go. OSP is now behind on the caps as we see ANS has pulled ahead by about 10 points now. It's just going to get worse than that. So let's see, here comes some of these supportive containers shedding a whole bunch of decoys here. So that's a nice way of messing up enemies' point defense. That said, are these going to actually lock onto target or not? Let's see. They are going to maybe make it past there. That's a defender is going to clean those up quite nicely. There's a flight of bombers here that unfortunately do not have anything to contribute to point defense style, but I think this Corvette will be fine on its own here as it just shreds through those containers. All right. Still, those bombers waiting in the wings here, trying to see if they can pick up anything on this side of the map. We see some more of those anti-fighter missiles. The reverse hybrids is kind of the working term for them, as they have very fast cruising stages, and then when they actually get into the stage mode, then they enter this high maneuverability mode, which makes them very hard to evade. Seeing these guys going after this bomber here, going to pop on it. Does not have nearly enough damage to kill it, as we see this bomber is pretty damaged, but still able to contribute to the fight and drop its payload if needed. So ANS forming themselves up over here. They have quite a lot of these air wings that are just kind of loitering in the area, daring the OSP to come forward and try them. OSP kind of boxed themselves into this corner of the map. ANS is largely uncontested over here on Seaside, but for the most part, OSP is just sitting here on this D point area, 1/4 of the map roughly controlled. ANS absolutely winning it as they've just managed to secure so much space here and are slowly tightening the noose, forcing them back into this sort of corner. OSP needs to make a play happen, and they need to do it soon. Otherwise, they're going to fall further and further behind on points. We see the Acello here is starting to engage the enemy. Its guns are started to try and bark at various targets. Looks like Vren's Steel Prince, the still alive Axford, is doing pretty okay. That said, the other one here, what's this? The Marquis Void Sailor. It is wounded, but it has managed to recover itself somewhat. We see the guns now back up to 27 and 25% respectively. So they're doing better than they were before, but at the same time, that 100 mil can still pose a very nasty threat. Here's a big coordinated push coming forward. This Acello does have Auroras, which can do a good number against craft. However, the question is just how many of them are they able to shoot down before they're able to get their payload off? Carriers have added a lot from Spectator. Yeah, carriers give you a lot of extra tracks you have to keep track of. Oops, sorry, that's my phone alarm telling me, hey, you should start that event. Never mind that. Anyways, we're going to see a flight of rooks over here. That's just a whole bunch of skiffs. Not sure what these guys are planning. They're kind of just wandering forwards here. Looks like they might just be feeding here. I think this must have been a micro error, as yeah, these have walked themselves way too far forward and are going to get picked off by all these SCM2s and fighters. It is pretty much free real estate, as the skiffs are not nearly as maneuverable as these interceptor fighters, the katanas, or the, oh, what is the name of them? I never remember the actual name of them because everyone renames these things in starter fleets, but anyways, those fighters are going to be eating good there as more of those assets getting depleted. We see there's still some bombers on station here waiting around trying to see what they can do, but for the most part, OSP kind of, I'm not going to say they're out of it, but they really need to find a way that they can start pushing this. Tantos? Ah, thank you, Firebird. That's the name of those fighter craft. All right, we're seeing, once again, a flight of skiffs here going to get engaged on. Here comes the big cap advantage coming this way as well. We're going to see just what happens when you are boxed into an area and the enemy gets to pick and choose how they attack you. Yeah, we're going to see a lot of flak coming out here as still those 100 mil bulkers are nearby and they are telling you, do not come over here. All these fighters need to start picking a path. Aurora's starting to cook off various strike craft as well. Some of them trying to get through here, but I think that's going to be a misplay from ANS. Yeah, so ANS bleeding a lot of vessels there as they try the waters and run into the big flak screens as well as the Auroras on this ship. We can see these Auroras have been battle shorted and burned down, so that's unfortunate, but hey, some of them are still active, so they're able to contribute a little bit more. Still going to be eating some 450 fire as the capital roll goes off. Those bombers, unfortunately, do not appear to have gotten their torpedo run off, and they are taking damage in return. If these bombers go down, those torpedoes are going to be quite a loss, as well as the hull itself. Bombers, fairly resilient, but that's a lot of flak popping these guys nearby. They're down to the oranges and yellows, respectively, and also running fairly low on fuel, it looks like. So they have only got about 20 seconds left before they have to go RTB and refuel. All right. Anus interceptors Tantos, and their bombers the Claymore. Ah, yes. So each faction has their own theming for stuff. As we see over here, these little Tantos, these are named after a type of sword. Same goes for the Claymore bombers. The sundial is kind of an exception, as it has a giant sundial on top. I believe that's where they got the name from. And then there's the skiffs on the OSP side. These are universal for both factions, called the Halberd. We have got then the fish naming scheme over here. So this would be the Barracuda class fighter. And I believe there's some sturgeon bombers we saw, but they may have RTB'd to refuel. So OSP has fish and the ANS has various bladed weapons. So we're going to see just how they use them. We're going to see a flight of fighters over here detecting those bombers on approach. They're going to say, oh, real shit, and be making their approach. Here comes some torpedoes down towards this group of bulkers here. Here comes a bit of flak and return flak. Not very effective against torpedoes. This might be a good impact on target. Let's watch this DC board. Ooh, that's going to be nasty. Splashes across quite a bit here. Takes out that damage control storage as well as the T-30s. That said, this thing does have quite a lot of restores. Still 6 remaining with that storage knocked out. Yeah, small, larges, complexes, another large. Yeah, this thing's got restores for days, so it can at least put itself back together. Still, good impact on target. We're going to see if they do get run down by these Barracudas or not. They are burning, trying to get away, and then maybe make themselves able to get back home. No, one of them does go down. Retaliation flak says, oh, you have torped me. I will see about that as more of this goes into them. Seeing the ACAP being contested down here as Tasty's managed to walk on with a very wounded tugboat. That said, it's still in the game and able to cap. There is a torpedo corvette that is fairly healthy and I believe still has its full complement. Let's check. Yep, it's got a, hybrid complement. Not torpedoes after all. That's a little bit different here. All right. Flak's still pretty good against these ships. It seems, yep, flak, it might deal half damage against quite a few threats, but it can deal full damage against various targets when they line up like that. Just depends which kind of threats you're facing. I don't remember the exact armor thickness that the 100 mil flak pens against, but I have seen in volumes like that, it is very effective against fighters. Speaking of fighters, these guys are wandering once again into the kind of screening range. These two frigates back here projecting just this very nasty no-fly zone in this area of the map. See, about that 7.5 to 8 kilometer range is where you do not want to be giving them line of sight. They will send missiles and some shots towards you with their Sarissas. Heartbreak Squadron over here doing their best to try and just take down those last Barracudas, and looks like they do manage to do it. So yeah, ANS doing a pretty good job keeping their flights up. We do see that these guys over here, these bombers, are making their way back to the levees. The levee class carrier is staying far in the back of the map, trying to be very safe. It's got its 15 meters a second maximum speed that's able to do launching and landing of craft with. However, you might want to move this thing up just a little bit more because it does mean that it's less time for your fighters to fly out and then come back. So there's the risk carried if the enemy decides to push you. Speaking of pushing, let's take a look over here. 100 mil bulkers and plasma is starting to open up on Vren. Vren trying to use open space to his advantage, pulling the enemy out of cover so he can sustain 450 shots on him. That said, he is retreating here and his front thrusters are going to get dinged here. We see these things getting dropped down pretty low. Let's turn that camera on. There we go. Yeah, those front thrusters, once those 3 go down, he's going to have very diminished return thrust. So he's going to see if maybe he can get run down or not. They're right outside the effective gun range of these things. We can see these T-30s are just not quite able to get it. They are currently masked by hull as well. We should see some of these say out of range. Some of them are still in range, though. Plasma cannons reach just a little bit further. We're going to see the one over here that was already plasmid is going to get just a little bit extra cooked for its trouble. 2 cap for the OSP, 3 cap for the ANS. ANS sitting on 570 points, OSP sitting on 362 as those points just tick. A cap was denied there very effectively by that little Corvette that could. It looks like they just used a couple of their hybrids to finish that guy off, and they've got a bit of overwatching fire from one of these 450. I keep trying to call them the wrong ship names. It's an Axford, not a Silo. Silly me. You can see that thing got blasted pretty thoroughly there, so yeah. Couple of flips now going on now. Let's take a look over at the D point as a little formation has managed to make its way over here. Where did this Axford come from as it's suddenly jumping on top of the carrier that is trying to desperately launch things? This is kind of a problem because if you have your point defense guns in range like so, as soon as these ships come off of the platforms, they're going to get splashed. Ooh, yeah, look at that instantly. Just 4 bombers attempt to launch and 4 bombers are going to go down. This ship is soft locked right now, needs to break area coverage of this ship's point defense guns as it is just having a bad time. Desperately trying to see some missiles fired out here to ward it off, and it's going to have to go to ground a little bit here, but still, that is not what you want to see with your carriers. Carriers should never be seen in direct combat. They are quite squishy. They have very soft internal modules, such as these bulk mags, which can get knocked out. If that magazine goes down, you have no ammunition to mount any of your fighters. So, though, here's the return salvo as some containers coming out to play. That is going to be some nasty damage. Oh, that is going to be a very hurt Axford. It's not quite structure broken, but it is in for a bad time. Reactor criticals going on there, fuel line fire, as well as a magazine detonation. That will save the carrier, so nice timing there as the OSP is able to shout out to their allies on comms and say, hey, boss, I'm soft locked here. Come strike this guy. So that is going to be a pretty big win there. Question is, does this thing cook off or not? OSP needs to start pushing themselves back in the game as they have fallen behind 230 points. The C-Caps was sent over here, and they do manage to get this. So, hey, they are starting to reverse it slightly. That said, there's a Corvette going out this way, going to be looking for clues against that one.
Boy.
Hey, thank you for the thank you for the follow, Wiry Joe. I was reading your name and trying to thank you at the same time. Anyways, here comes some Spearfish rockets coming by, as I believe a flight of bombers was able to launch, or maybe those were containers. Some of those must have been from some craft. I believe the R3s were limited to only the bombers. Up. Alchemist as well, thank you for the follow. We're seeing reactor crit on this thing, possibly able to fix, repairing a fire. Oh no, that fuel line fire. Yeah, you're not going to fix a fuel line fire with 4 negative criticals going on that. That work plant, yeah, look at that. Work speed, 82% reduction. This thing is going to cook itself off, and we'll see in about 10 seconds what happens there. In the meantime, looks like Brent is still just kind of being zoned out here as the OSP is pushing themselves back into this game. Let's turn on cinematic cam and just watch that lovely fuel line fire as it goes pop, pop across the ship, shall we? There we go. That's the fuel line detonation as this thing is just going to go up like that. All of the thrusters fuel is detonating across the ship. Taking a look at the internals. Yeah, this thing is just smoking wreck as more and more of those detonate off. And that is, I believe, going to be a ship that is dead, done, and dusted, unless they have a restore that I'm not seeing. They do still technically have micro-reactors keeping them in the game, as well as that Citadel CIC, but in terms of effectiveness, this ship cannot move. Why did you put a small whiplash in this? Ah, you silly. You put a big whiplash in that slot. Anyways, a little bit of backseating playfully aside there. This is a ship that is currently just a, well, it's a drifting hulk of a wreck, so it's not going to really do much. And I think that these are going to say something about it as well, just some more containers for their trouble. That said, it looks like they're not validating or maybe not staging quite right, as they managed to miss the ship entirely, probably just because it was taking a dirt nap. C point, let's take a look over here. It looks like the Scoundrel is kind of in smooching distance of the Corvette. All right, so these two just going to be saying hi, hello to each other. No cap will happen while these are both on the point, but that does mean that we're going to see if these fighters will do something about it or not. Potentially could open up with their light guns against the very thin armor of the little, what do you call this thing? Shuttle, that's the word. You see a couple of those bombs, I think, going off into this thing. Basic CIC is knocked. No restores on this. That is going to be a flip there, as now ANS using their little guy that could here. It's got, let's see, what was it? Yeah, it had bombs, so just the unguided bombs, able to line up on that target. He did not have his point defense gun in the correct arc and is just going to get smacked there as he was able to evade those incoming defensive missiles. And now we're going to see over here the, what do you call this? The Tilly A Biondo is going to be capping Seaside. That's going to, again, put the OSP further on the back foot. It is 700 to 472. Keep in mind, 1252 win, so we have to watch that. Blessed little fighter bomber, yeah, going to show the value yet. Just a singular fighter bomber is able to go over, drop its payload, and get that much value against a little ship like that, securing you a cap point. So carriers are good. You can do a lot of little things with them. Speaking of little things, we're going to see some little combats go off here. Ooh, oh no. Barracuda wing is going to be flying into some defensive missiles, and the Auroras on the Monk down here are going to be eating good today. Sarissa's as well elevating, trying to track their targets. Whew. I think that is that in fire. Nope, not the entire flight shot down, but this Hustler, yeah. He's in for a bad time. I believe more missiles were inbound, if I saw correctly. Should be on one of these ships. Oops, Sarissa fire as well, and a combat wing approaching. Oh, there we go. That's that missile coming around and smacking him. So yeah. ANS had a rough go on the B side, but they gave ground and they pulled the enemy forwards. Now they just need to decide what are they going to do to get back in the game, the OSP that is. Oh, okay, taking a look over here, we see that the point defense guns are still actually active on this, so it does still have its Citadel and its magazine, as well as those PD turrets. This only have the Stonewall flak. Still, sitting right next to the carrier, you are getting some free value. Spearfish Rocket's going to go ahead and say something about that, though. Yep, there you go. Stonewall is gone. Still cannot quite kill this ship, as unfortunately those reactors and the Citadel are just really not breaking at this moment, so they'll probably need something like bombs or a little bit of the Daka from these triple 100 bulkers over here to come by and finish it. Still, though, this ship should not really provide any more of a threat. If we take a look at it, it does technically have its radar, but it's only one panel left on this thing, and, well, it's just kind of a smoking hole. It's just waiting to collect its salvage payout, so there's another rocket just for good measure right in the snoot of this thing. Structure broken, so any damage will migrate across it. So that is going to be a capital kill there proper. That was a lot of points from Blade's fleet, as Blade did unfortunately lose the escorting jam frigate along with it, and it was one of their torpedo corvettes here. I think this was a hybrid boat, right? Check out. Yep, it did have hybrid, so they're unfortunately down to just one ship and a little scouting skiff that could. Still, though, in terms of fleet comp, we take a look. Tasty, in turn, also bleeding assets. The cap fleet kind of getting wrecked by the various assets. Does make sense since there is a lot of carrier presence here from the ANS side, trying to hunt down those little lighter assets. So also have to watch out for some of the overwatching fire provided by the large capitals. A couple of size 2s going out here looking for clues. That's fired off from Tasty's monitor, which still has, I believe, some of its ammunition payload. Let's see. Yeah, it's still got 70%, so it's able to fire a big old volley of those against a target of opportunity. Let's see, we got, I just realized the names on this thing. We got Thigh Highs, Stans the Skeleton, and Sensitive Femboy Fox. You love the Nebulous community for their name and conventions. Always can come up with something fun. Yeah, we're seeing the 100 bulkers moving back towards the D point. Unfortunately for the ANS, the ship did not drift onto the point there. Otherwise, it could maybe contest or at least force them to invest some more assets to taking it out. So they probably just write that off as dead and are deciding to go after more important targets right now. We see both carriers kind of migrating themselves into this center rock area here, playing very defensively, trying to wait and see what the OSP does. ANS knows they are in an advantageous position, 250 point lead here. They have 3 caps. They are just going to sit pretty on it and try and punish any mistake that the OSP makes as they try and aggress here. Keeping OSP attention far longer than it has any business. Yep, that is absolutely correct. This thing, it's just living rent-free in their head. They probably know it's there, but they're going to have to decide, all right, we won't bother killing that. Let's look at some gunshots going off here as some 100 and plasma is going to be going here. 100 maybe a little bit early as the plasma does have a bit of travel time and it's going to take a bit to unmask and fully open up here. Most of these 100 HE shots are just going to be plinking harmlessly off the hull. They do look very pretty though, as we see now the first plasma scorch. That's going to degrade the ship's armor. Once that armor starts getting scorched here, it's going to be bad news bears. Does this thing have anything to do? It's got a Raider and a Dragonfly and a Whiplash, so it could possibly turn its nose to face the incoming salvo. Question is, can it do it before all of this plasma starts impacting? These T-30s are already reloading their guns, so they have clearly got some ammo elevators in this. Let's see, we got 2 rapid cradles, 2 ammo elevators, nice little mixed complement there. Unless I'm missing anything else. Nope, that looks like the buff modules. All right, seeing some size 2s as well, testing the waters. Auroras are still good. There we go. That's the plasma starting to impact. Now we see the back slot on this thing. Chat box getting hurt. Reactors going down. Sarissas as well. Sarissa's very expensive. A lot of restores on this thing. We did see there was a total of 11, so it can recover a bit. Also has that very tough nose here. That Citadel is no joke. It will take a lot of damage to knock out all of these devices here. But it's going to be a question of, can it turn in time, or is it going to get punished heavily by this plasma and 100 as we watch more and more of the ship going down there? Yep, Raider Drive is knocked out as well. That is a lot of damage in a very short span of time. Plasma and 100 does not play when you get within that range. Taking a look at this ship down here, we're just going to watch as it slowly gets bled. We see it is target locked as well, meaning they're within the effective range of them. So basically no error here. You're just going to get damaged. We watch more and more of the ship peeling apart. Noticeably, the antenna is down. The nose antenna is still up, though, so it can receive friendly information. Seeing some skirmishing going down here as more and more of these missiles and containers. Yep, ANS has kind of managed to get themselves out of here. Ooh, one of those things is going to actually get picked off here as the little Sarissa brick is going to go down. That's a rather expensive asset that has a missile bank on it as well. So nice pick off there as they're able to get themselves some devices. The fighters, unfortunately, not quite able to get it. A little bit of a furball kicking on here. We can see the new UI as the reactor bloom goes off in the background. See this little indicator here. You can see there's the number of blue dots representing ANS ships and the orange dots representing OSP. This approximates the center of the furball as these bombers are kind of engaging into the... Oop, why did it flick over like that? Okay, camera's a little bit wonky on this one. Okay, the furball canceled right as I tried to flick the camera to it, so... All right, let's see. Here comes some size 2s heading towards the A point. We do see that there is a little hustler on the point now, trying to flip that over for the OSP. Also, we're seeing the E point is being contested. Let's take a look over on the map. Where is E side? Here we go. Tasty Cookie starting to make some aggression onto the points here. little multi-mission tug that could, trying to fire its gun into this corvette that was unfortunately forgotten about and going to be going down here. Prowler drive and the basic CIC will get popped shortly. Once one of those things goes down, it is going to be a dead ship. So that's going to be an ECAP attempt, and looks like the ACAP attempt was deflected here, as we see, unfortunately, it was just shot down. Did not quite catch by what that was. Probably going to be some of those fighters or other assets around the place, or maybe it was this little torpedo corvette still staying on station. Oh boy, here comes the missiles, as looks like the little silo device here is going to be firing on multiple targets, some of them going towards the already dead corvette, unfortunately. Other ones going to be flying upwards here, trying to test the waters. The Monk was hurt earlier, as we see the left side entirely scorched out, but it is starting to put itself back together. Some restore needs to be done here, but that's just a little thing the players will get around to doing. Initial attempts at carriers were less than stellar. Well, don't worry about it. We can see that people have learned a little bit here, and it's only going to get better from here, right? All right, we can see a couple of these flights kind of lingering around. These Sturgeon bombers are quite dangerous. We see they have these bludgeon and poleaxe class torpedoes. So getting a little flight of bombers like this, you can see a lot of torpedoes dumped. Anyone who has played Nebulous knows that torpedoes are quite scary within that, like, 3 to 4 kilometer range. So we can see these guys do a rapid burn approach onto wounded targets and potentially tax them. ANS doing their best to hold on to things right now. We see still a couple of points left until they win, 940 and 640. So that is a 300-point detriment that the OSP is sitting on. That said, they did manage to secure themselves that ECAP. Going to be a question of what they do in turn. Ooh, going to be seeing a crit going off here. Magazine fire and a cook-off as well. Ew, that's going to be bad news, Bears. Damage control teams are unfortunately stuck fixing these two devices. Actually, is this ship even in the... It's still alive with the Ox, but they are maybe going to fix that in time? Hard to say. 45 seconds. I think they can make it happen. Yeah, so they will be able to recover this. Unfortunately, it does mean that the ECAP is probably not going to go through once this ship does get cleaned up. They just need something with offensive capability to properly dislodge that. Here come some more of these torpedoes launched from those Sturgeons, like we said earlier. They're going to be taxed a little bit by the Auroras. Bit of damage going down there, but at the same time, the Steel Prince over here, let's see if it has enough point defense. Seeing those defenders go off like that, let's turn on cinematic camera and just watch this go in. Looks like they are not locking onto the ship. They're instead going after either a... Yep, active decoy. That's the one seducing these guys. So they're going to get all eaten up. Nice use of point defense devices there. Also, the soft kill suite in the back slot of this thing does use those. They reworked active decoys. So they now are size 2. Can't just take them in the size 1 banks anymore. All right, let's look around the map. We see there's some more containers going out here. It looks like Gnome Puncher has decided to move up a little aggressively. Gnome clearly got bombed at some point or other. We must have missed that attack strike because, wow, that's a lot of damage to a container liner you do not like to see. Main engines are all knocked out. Same with the chaff box. Container bank launchers are active. They do have a storage, but there's only, there's one team on this thing and no restorers. So what you see is what you got. They're trying to move forward, try and get themselves set up for a nice container strike. We see some time on target shenanigans going off here as there's going to be multiple avenues of attack. Rocket containers from the flank as big containers come in from the front. Let's watch this thing. Is it going to get through? Yes, it is. Clonk and clonk. Wow. Okay, that's a lot of damage dealt to the Monk. We're going to see this thing's guts have been thoroughly rearranged by those missiles to the front and to the side. Now it's just the case of what follows this up, as missiles will not properly kill capital like this, but you do soften it up a lot for a follow-up blow, potentially from unguided bombs or your team's front line following up on them. So is it still to 1,000 points? Nope. If it was, then OSP would be out of the game right about... Come on, tick now. But instead, it is to 1250, as we stated at the start of the match. So E point is defended here as the ANS is able to secure that. That said, A point is going in the hands of the OSP now. You see they've got a little capper that could try to make its way through the world here. 450 is still active on the Monk over here despite its thorough attackings. So we'll see just what happens here. So that is going to be a bit of a flip. OSP really needs to make up their points deficit here at now, as ANS only 240 or so points to win versus OSP needing at least like, what, 500 or so? Yeah, about 500 there. Nothing threatening seaside, unfortunately, as OSP pretty much bled on assets here. Tasty, unfortunately, knocked out of the game as the ANS has been very thorough at taking care of these little cappers. They do still have assets. We see Solar over here still has their Ocello somewhat. It is Mickey, it's a little worse for wear, but you can still fight with this thing. 2 magazines and CIC along with a bunch of guns. That's all you need. Just needs to get itself into the game proper. Is defending the B point, and that is important, but they do need to find a way to get themselves a significant cap advantage, because otherwise ANS is slated to win on just a 2 cap here. See some more missiles going off here as Torpedo Strike is coordinated. This is one of the big threats against lighter targets like this. A lot of torpedoes shortly out. Yeah, Pavis cannot shoot down 4 torpedoes at once. That's going to be another dead, done, and dusted ship. A lot of asset being bled here, as unfortunately that is, I think, the last light asset. Nope, there's still technically a tug that's just kind of waiting strategic reserves over on B side, but ANS making sure that OSP has a rough go at it. Normally, OSP having a significant advantage with these very cheap Capper craft that can walk themselves onto a point, but ANS being brutal with their dual carrier setup here, trying to make sure that all of them are torpedoed or bombed. See now, down here, Gnome Puncher is, I believe, in direct fire range. Yeah, so the Monk over here could be getting some shots into it. Unfortunately, Monk has been run up by these triple bulkers who are now starting to once again get into the fight. I think OSP has maybe been a little bit passive this game, not quite confident enough to take a frontline push or aggress onto some of the points. As we saw what happened at the start of the game, if you walk onto these neutral points, you can get shot quite a bit, but they need to put some pressure on and soon if they're going to win this one. See now, the 100 mil shot's going to be just kind of plinking into the front of the ship, largely being absorbed by these reinforced compartments here. Citadel and 2 magazines is very hard to knock out, so unless these are at 0% exactly and then double tapped, then they are going to hold up. We'll see if they're able to do that with the sheer volume of fire they have. Ooh, seeing some noticeable issues here. Where is that thing's magazine? Here it is, Citadel mag. Yeah, the ship has run out of plasma, so what you see is what you get for armor strip. It does still have its T-30s firing HEHC, so good damage on those, but no more armor stripping this game, so you're going to have to just try and hit these softened angles. A couple of bombs being fired off as these ships do not appear to have any point defense on them, or at least none that's firing, as those are going to strike true. Yeah, that's going to be a lot of damage dealt as more of those T-30s are getting knocked out, as well as a boosted reactor. Good effect with those bombers there. ANS doing the right thing with their carrier play, just making sure that they can pick targets of opportunity, stuff that does not have the sufficient point defense to ward off those bombers, and just really tearing through them. All right, let's take a look here now. We're going to see the ANS, they're moving on to the A point here, trying to secure themselves a bit more cap advantage, but at the same time, Gnome is just hanging out here with the little container liner that could. I don't think this thing has any more boxes. It looks largely expended. Yeah, it looks like it's down to just decoys and size 1s, so that's going to be just a empty hull here, just kind of drifting. They probably have visuals, so they can tell that. Crane tanking is crazy, they're saying, so I believe that what they're referring to is using the little cranes here to tank shots. I don't know if they are really getting much value here, but I believe that those can deflect some shots depending on the angling and stuff, so one of the little quirks of Nebulous here and there. That said, I don't think it's going to be anything that's really going to show up, like making or breaking, whether you have a crane there or not. So just pick whichever bulker hull is your favorite. You can see this thing is, yep, once again, just getting blasted in the front of it. It is going to be having a bad time, but at the same time, they just can't quite break the suit of this. Axfords and, well, pretty much every ANS ship bow on is going to be pretty tanky and tough. Even with this sheer volume of fire hitting it, you're just going to see they still cannot manage to quite break these things as they're not able to deal enough isolated damage. That mag cook-off, though, might do something about this. You're going to have to watch out for that. Potentially, if you can't kill the ship, one strategy is to use Grape Shot to try and bleed out the repairing teams and see if you can do that. Still, though, damage split across all of these things. There's 40 damage threshold and 50 for the Citadel, so this is incredibly hard to kill from the front. So that cook-off could be something about it, we'll see. Okay, some bombs coming out here as well. Noticing the container liner was largely undefended. They're going to just firing a couple of these little bombs. We'll watch as the internals go kablooey. Yep, that's going to be it. Pretty much just taken... Yeah, pretty much bomb hit the top of this thing, gutted it all the way down to that internal hangar at the very bottom there. So, oof. Does still mean the ship is in the game, so they can't quite leave the point yet, as it is holding down that cap point very nicely. I believe a ceremonial arming missile keeping this thing in the game, right? Maybe? No, its chat box is out. I guess the container bank does still count as offensively capable, so there you go. Is going to be holding down the A point against the Monk here, which is having a bit of a bad time. Does fix that magazine, so it doesn't cook off, but at the same time, it is going to mean that OSP is sitting on that 3 cap. Still, ANS rapidly approaching that win condition they wanted. 1250 points first means that you win, and, well, that's kind of all that it'll be if you don't do something fast, OSP. Offensive poking with decoy containers? I mean, you can't really attack with decoy containers, but they are a nice asset to have on the board. The Steel Prince has made a mighty migration as it started on this side of the map and has walked all the way over towards the seaside trying to defend that. We see there's the carrier from Carsony over here desperately trying to launch some stuff, maybe to see if it can see off the 450 ship here. It does mean the belly gun is damaged, but it looks like the top gun should still be active. Ships are trying to make their way onto these points now as we kind of are trying to flick around. This match a little bit laggy with the carriers, and also the map being one of the larger ones in the modded side with a lot of vertices. It does get a little bit chugging sometimes. See the camera kind of clipping through stuff there as the frame rate drops. All right, let's take a look around the battle space proper. We see that the 100 mil bulkers over here, they're still just trying to kill off the Monk, and it is refusing to give up the Ghost as it sits on the point here, just inviting them forwards. Take a couple more of these bombs here, trying to knock Gnome out of the game. Let's see if this does go through. Yep, that is going to be a knockout for those container bank launchers, and I think the rest of the ship as well. Structure break is going to be the end of that. That means ANS will get themselves the cap here on the point, and I think that's probably OSP's chances in this game going down the drain. Damn. The gnome has indeed been punched. Yep, so we're going to see there's a couple bombers over here that unfortunately I don't believe can get back on the carrier. It's a little too close, and if they were to get that close, then I think the point defense guns would be able to shoot them down. I think the flak is still active on this side. They're missing a defender, it looks like, but yeah, they still have some offensive, well, defensive, but offensive against the craft, rather. Carrier desperately trying to make a play at this, but they're going to say nuh-uh. There's also the little Corvette that could hang it out here just to secure that cap point in case the Steel Prince does go down. So they have got this firmly in the bag. Looks like ANS just going to be locking themselves in for the next 100 or so points as they collect on their win. Still, OSP electing to fight to the very end here as they're trying to do just as much damage as possible. Remarkably, Vren's Axford still in the game, showing that Axford's still very resilient even after the blasting it took on that point before. I am really surprised that this thing lived through that. Only an Axford that gets plasma stripped like that and then opened up on by 100 mil is just going to fold. However, despite losing most of its internals, as well as a couple of the essential point defense mounts, the ship was not punished due to the very good fighter coverage that ANS was able to provide, keeping the bombers from going after it. Yep. Well, we're not quite done yet there, but hey, good showing to you, Tasty. Thank you for playing and all of that. Cap is very hard to play, especially when you're trying to juggle multiple different things, especially against coordinated players who have carriers to try and hunt down those assets. We're just watching as the 100 mil bulkers are engaging against two of these Axfords now, I believe. There's the monk that was down there, and yeah, they were engaging also against this one, which is still technically an arc, although they just decided it's not really a threat since it has no guns. C point is being contested now as both teams just kind of trying to limp onto it. Looks like there is a monitor kind of making its way over here, the little carrier thing that could. I thought about doing this potentially, but it's an interesting little tech. I'm not sure if it's good or not, but it is a cute way of providing a little bit of fighters if you don't want to pay for the carrier, the light carrier, the journeyman class, that is. We'll see if this possibly gets reworked into something. Maybe it just brings like 1 or 2 skiffs in the landing pads itself, because it does pay for the internal hangars here. But it's a nice little tech. It's nice to see people still experimenting with stuff, trying to figure out what kind of tools and toys they want. And yeah, we'll see where we go from there. Steel Prince is just going to hold this down. Going to be about 30-ish points to win. Oop, here comes the bombs against a large target like this. They are very effective. Going to see, yeah, that is going to be a carrier knocked out, dead, done, and dusted there, unfortunately. C-point contention does go on those. They still do have at least one ship on the point here that is offensively capable, although I'm not exactly sure how. I guess that these hangars count as offensive mounts. Huh. The more you know, because you need to have an offensive mount like a VLS or a gun. So I guess the carriers, because these PVs don't count, the small mounted hangars do still count as an offensive ability. The more we know. Little educational things. All right, that's going to be the final ticks coming in here, and we'll just wait and see if there's any last-second kills. Looks like the Axfords are all remarkably going to survive. Even the monk down here, which is basically gutted. That's going to be GG, well play called. Ooh. The ANS eating it to the teeth earlier on when they wandered onto B side, but then managing to work their fighter control over the area. Very tough since the OSP does have a strong 3,000 point carrier there, but the ANS able to levy their levies to an advantageous win. I'm going to just export this battle report here and we'll save that. All right.